Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where the orchard of wisdom shows are at your fingertips. It ignites your soul, your heart, your spirit, your mind, and your body with illumination from people who have made the journey before you. They're here now to help you on your journey, on your path of self-discovery. We are funded by you, the audience, and the people we interview. If you wish to support us, please go to selfdiscoverymedia.com and press on our Fund Action button. Anything is appreciated. We'd like you to sit back and enjoy the shows. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Raising Our Gifted Children, right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest is Mark Bauerlein, the sequel to the book of Defending a Generation from Stupefied Youth to Dangerous Adults. You know, we look at our children today and we think there's so much potential. There's so much at their fingertips. They have so much information that they could apply to an extraordinary life. Yet somehow we just see this bent over look as they look at their telephones or their telephone, I'm aging myself, their cell phones, their mobile phones. And it's really quite scary to the fact that they can't put a sentence together and their attention span is that of 2 seconds. Is this designed? Is this another form of control? Do we really want our children to be mindless? So he says that back in 2008, a voice was crying out in the wilderness as experts greeted a new generation of digital and natives with the extravagant hopes of their high-tech future, and he pegged them as the dumbest generation. Today, their future doesn't look so bright, and their presence is pretty grim. 20-somethings who spent their childhood staring at a screen are lonely, purposeless, unfulfilled at work and at home, and many of them are even suicidal. The dumbest generation grows up is an urgently needed update from the Millennials, explaining why the not so quiet desperation and, more important, the threat to their ignorance poses to the rest of us. Lacking skills, knowledge, religion, a cultural frame of reference, millennials are anxiously looking for something to fill the void. Their mentors have failed them. Unfortunately, they have turned to politics to plug the hole in their souls. Knowing nothing about history, they are convinced that it's merely a catalogue of oppression, inequality, and hatred. Why, they wonder, has the human race not ended in this injustice before now? From the depths of their ignorance rises the answer: because they are the first ones to care. All that is needed to tear down our inherited civilization and replace it with the utopia aspirations for a generation acquainted with the constraints of human nature and everything possible. We have extraordinary children, folks, but at the same time, why are they so dumb? Welcome to the show, Mark.
Sarah, I'm glad to join you. Thank you for having me on. Yes.
And if anybody was watching the video, you can see he's all snuggy warm there right now because he's in freezing temperatures. He's coming to you in freezing temperatures. You know, I have millennial children in their 30s, and I have a grandson of 10 months old. And very often as a podcaster, I get, oh, your podcasts are too long. The attention span, you have to capture them in the first 2 seconds, and basically their time span is 10 minutes. And to which I always say that I'm not catering for those people. I'm catering for the people who really want nuggets of information. But it is sad that we even have to actually consider it. And it is scary when you see that they've actually even made a movie that's an emoji movie. You know, it's just like mind-boggling. Why is there so much emphasis on dumbing down our children?
It's interesting that you point to this acceleration of attention, the necessity of stimulation. And you can see that in the comparison, say, of movies today with movies from the 1950s. The cuts take place in a much shorter period of time, in the average time. You got to move. You got to keep the bells and whistles going. You got to do the special effects because they've been conditioned with this kind of stimulation. They play video games.
Yes.
And the video games are, hitting them with lots of input, lots of things to perceive and process, and it goes on all the time. And so it makes them, their minds, their brains are unaccustomed to that slow reading,
Yeah.
let's say, the contemplative moment that slows down or limits the perception input coming in, and that the reflective moments that require you, hey, step back, disengage. It's not a habit for them. And you can see the loss in this when, I mentioned movies, for instance. There are famous sequences in film that are rather quiet and slow, but are genuine occasions of high art. For instance, I don't know if you know Hitchcock's film Vertigo.
Yes.
When Scotty follows Madeline, or who he thinks is Madeline, around the city, it's about 12 or 13 minutes, hardly any talking. And the movement is very slow along the streets. She stops at a flower shop, then she goes to a museum and just sits there. He stands there, and it's unfolding in this eerie, slow-paced and near silence. They can't watch that. The end of Michelangelo Antonioni's film L'Eclisse, a series of images for five or 7 minutes. Martin Scorsese says this was one of the great touchstones for my development as a director. They can't watch these things. I have colleagues who will tell you in college, it's getting harder to assign a book longer than 200 pages. Not novels. Many high school teachers have given up on teaching novels. They teach shorter selections because the habit isn't there. And, we're talking about gifted children.
Yeah.
Gifted kids can suffer from this just as much as any children. We're not talking about a habit that is correlated with intelligence. A lot of high IQ kids can get on this stimulation track just as easily as low IQ kids can. And one thing that has disappeared, I've been an English teacher for a long time. I started at Emory University in 1990. And at that time, for one thing, the English major was very big. And on college campuses, English was always a central discipline.
Yeah.
And there were always these kids in class who weren't really grade conscious. They weren't on the achievement track. They were a little offbeat, maybe a little granola like, but they read books. They were bookworms. They were there because reading was important. Them read novels, characters. You could tell in high school they had a good English teacher, and reading became part of themselves.
Yes.
That student has pretty much disappeared by now. It's not that the intelligence have gone down. Again, it's the habits have changed. And if you look on college campuses in the United States, the humanities now, which used to be the center of the liberal education, they're window dressing. They're marginal at this point. In 1970 in the United States, 1 out of about 13 four-year degrees was in English. English majors made up 7 to 8% of all the bachelor's degrees granted at that time. Now we've gone from 1 to 13. Now English collects less than 1 in 50 degrees. It's minor. All the foreign languages combined, 1% of all the degrees.
Yeah.
And this is a sign of many things, but one thing, it's a sign of people don't read. They're not that interested in reading anymore. Kids, you got a bigger menu of leisure options now. You got the video games, you got the phone, texting, and Instagram, and doing videos, and Snapchat, and all the rest. Books are just one minor leisure option among others. And I'm not talking about Shakespeare and Dostoevsky, any books. I mean, detective novels, romance novels, sports biographies, biographies of rappers.
Yes.
Just not any books. They're just not part of the regular menu.
Right. I think that, they're oversaturated. And, one of the biggest problems that we're seeing is such a high stress level amongst humanity in itself, but especially amongst our youth, because they don't know how to decompress. They don't know how to be still, just in the moment or in their imagination. They don't know how to have a conversation. So they don't know how to actually articulate how they're feeling or what their perception is, of the view of the world, because there's one saturation after another hitting them. So the actual art of being still and picking up a book, or even just having time of thoughts on your own, is something that is kind of archaic to most of them because they haven't been taught it. And, basically the apparatus like the video and then the DVDs became the babysitters. And, that stimulation, as you said, all the movies especially American movies, where it is always got to be about action, about violence.
Boom, boom, boom.
Boom, 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 in your face all the time. Where, I'm British, give me a good British drama where you're unraveling and you think, oh, he did it. Oh, well, maybe she did it. And you're engrossed in the entire art of what is, the anticipation of what is coming up. As you see, that 12-minute scene of just following, it built up. And it built up and it built up, what's going to happen? Are they going to meet? All of this type of thing. And you're on the edge of your seat. Well, they're on the edge of their seat with who's going to get blown up and in what way. And it's the wrong message that we're sending, because we're actually also sending that violence is cool. And your way out, instead of a conversation or an inquiry, or looking something up, is a lost art, because it's just take them out.
Yeah. It's not even violence, it's fantasy violence. Mm-hmm. And they don't know the difference. I mean, that's the point.
That is the problem, yes.
The fantasy aspect, I mean, you see it in TV commercials, in fact, but, the superhero movies, these absurdities where, you're offering these visions of human behavior that just have no reality to them whatsoever, but you're making up for that thin content with the stimulation, with the music that they play, with all the visuals and the flash and the camera movements and all the computerized graphics that are included in all of this. And let's be clear, Sarah. People who designed the games, the websites, the social media, the devices that primed our kids to become consumers of this juvenilia, at age 30, they did it intentionally.
Yeah.
This was on purpose. Silicon Valley, I talk in the new book about how these devices were designed by people with the help of psychologists who were experts in addiction and attention. That they wanted to know how to design sites that would get our kids' eyes on them and hold them there all night long.
Yeah.
Because they need money.
Yes. It's all money generated, isn't it? That's all the form of control of it.
The Silicon Valley people, they don't let their own kids get on these tubes.
Right, exactly. They know how addictive it is.
Didn't let his kids get on the computers all the time. And the popular private schools in Silicon Valley are places like the Waldorf School, which are low technology.
Yeah.
So they knew what they were doing. And you and I and all the other parents out there, we are fighting $1 billion juggernaut that is taking our kids' eyes and gluing them to little screens.
Right.
So we have to understand what is going on today with the millennials. They're now 30 years old. I did the book in 2008 because I kept hearing people raving about these 15-year-olds, the millennials. They're amazing. They're the greatest generation. They are smart, ambitious. They're going to college in record numbers. They helped elect the first African-American president in American history. They have all the great tolerant, progressive attitudes. and they run, and the proof of their superiority is they got these devices and they're running circles, or grown-ups. They are the ones who are going to lead America into the 21st century. And I just said, I can't listen to this anymore. I would sit on the quad at the break between classes and see these kids, walking from one class to another.
Bent over, like an F for Facebook. Yes.
There you go. And just attached to these things. I'd go to the library and all the computer stations would be occupied. I'd go up to the book stacks and I'd lie down and take a nap and no one would bother me for hours. It's like a morgue up there. So that's why I wrote that first book, The Dumbest Generation, to say it is a very bad thing to give a 15-year-old a device that he can use to send out 4,000 text messages a month. He can keep by his pillow so that he's awakened at 1 a.m. if a cool picture from the party comes through, that he can walk around with 250 photos of himself in his pocket at all times. Unhealthy.
Yes.
Very bad. And I did the book and it came out. It got some notice because the timing was right, I think. And I gave a lot of talks and a lot of criticism from intellectuals and from academics who said, listen to the old grouch talking. We've been complaining about the young. They did it with Elvis and comic books. That they always do this,
In my day.
Now, my response to that is, curmudgeon, you're darn right. You're all grouch. That's exactly right. When this is going on, you have to be. It's part of the job.
Yes.
Elders to say, hey, 17-year-old, knock it off. Put that stupid thing away and read a book.
Right.
Forget about that stupid party. Learn a little history. Get a little politics. How about some religion? Look, let's get a little serious. When I was 17, I didn't want that, but you had the grown-up content pressing in upon you. I couldn't go anywhere else. So I had to sit at the kitchen table while listening to Walter Cronkite talking. There was no other screen in the house. There was no phone. There was one phone in the kitchen.
Yes.
Couldn't get on that all night. It was so. I had to absorb some adult stuff. I couldn't shut it out. And there were only 5 TV stations, and there weren't any kid stuff, teen stuff that I could tap into. And the millennials didn't get that because they could tune it all out. They could go into their bedrooms and they've got, the devices, the video game, the laptop, the phone, the TV, the music playing, and they could create this little bubble world of youth, of adolescence that simply reflected their own comforts and values and interests and the teasing and the gossiping and the peer pressure, all that stuff. And this is a formation that rendered them ill-equipped for adulthood. Right?
Well, it's an illusional world they're in. There's no sense of reality in it, right?
Rates of narcissism millennials are high. Now,
rates of depression and suicide, as you said, are very high too.
That's right. Whoever would have thought that we would create narcissists when we gave them tools like YouTube, whose motto was broadcast yourself?
Yes.
Or MySpace, Facebook, a whole page all about me. And
TikTok,
these selfies,
20 seconds of being ridiculous. Yes.
Who would have thought that this would produce narcissism rates? Golly.
Yeah.
So I did this follow-up book, which is just coming out. The Dumbest Generation Grows Up, which says, okay, these millennials who were celebrated as the wave of the future, the digital natives, how are they doing? And as you said, the rates of mental health are down. They're not getting married, forming families. They're not having kids. which is a sign of pessimism, actually.
Yes.
Sign of instability. They have high rates of job dissatisfaction. I mean, we heard everything in back, 15 years ago. The millennials are going to transform the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? A whole lot of them hate their jobs.
Yeah.
And don't want to stick around. On the social attitudes for all their tolerance and progressivism, they rate, and this is self-rating on polls, survey data, they rate the most highly on intolerance.
Mm-hmm.
Older generations, they have high levels of social mistrust. They mistrust coworkers and fellow citizens, and they have a more vengeful attitude toward life. If someone does something bad, do you think that person should suffer? Yes, absolutely. And this is the source of the cancel culture that they support. They're perfectly willing to sign a petition with 2,000 other people to get a person fired for telling a dumb racial joke on Facebook in private time. We're going to go flood your employer with emails and phone calls, petitions to get you hired because we don't like what you said.
Right. Instead of educating, it's vindictiveness, right?
You just take them out.
Yeah. It's so easy, like on the video games, the trouble is there's no consequences and there's no sense of humanity or understanding. We can't really blame the generation of ignorance because they stepped into ignorance through our lack of teaching, or as you said, through the manipulation of the media, which is time for us to say, no, that isn't acceptable. This is why. Change your ways. To tore and quarter them is unproductive. All you're going to have is a whole load of corpse everywhere, right? And it puts people kind of scared in the corner to ever come out and say anything or do anything, because now people are treading on hot coals the whole time. So yes, we can call somebody out for something, but this whole, tar and feather attitude is just something that is unproductive and against humanity, because we have to all understand we all make mistakes. It's what we learn from those mistakes that is kind of part of the journey of life in itself. And if we haven't got the attention span and we're quick to be vindictive and we're quick to dismiss people or mistrust people, come out with the mistrust first, then how are we ever going to actually listen to each other's stories or understand where it comes from in order to heal at the very core? Because they just want to obliterate.
This is one of the consequences, as you said, of being able to create what was called a dozen years ago the daily me, where you've got your connections and you're consuming different media, you've got your friends network, and what you're able to do is form around yourself a universe of reflection. You're not going to get into a debate. You can get rid of debate because, debate can be taxing. You're not going to take news from right-wing sources and left-wing sources just to have a broad, okay, what are they saying? What are they saying? No, you're going to take news from sources that affirm what you already believe, because it feels better.
Yeah.
When you're 17, you want to feel better. You want to think the world is your oyster. And they were able to think this because they customized and individualized the input so much that when they face dissent, disagreement, when they go out in the world, they can't cope. They can't deal with it. You're racist. That's sexist. What that is an expression of fragility. I can't handle what you're saying, so pow. And fragility can be very powerful. Let's be clear. Fragility can be dangerous. In fact, people can do rotten things out of a feeling of siege, right?
Yes.
Sieged, I've got to strike back.
Yeah.
So this is part of the formation of the millennials was not to induct them into a pluralist society, a pluralistic universe, a place where, you know, you need a little bit of a thick skin. Free speech means, you know, you got to tolerate stuff you don't like, because you don't tolerate things you like. Tolerance assumes I don't like that, but I'm going to tolerate it because, you know, we all have to get along and we all can't be the same. Tolerance too often is I'm intolerant of anyone who I think isn't tolerant.
Yes.
It's a very strange, you know, projection thing going on with them. But you know, you mentioned people get nervous. My very liberal professor colleagues, they vote Democrat. They're not in any way, you know, vindictive people. They're not even that political. A lot of my colleagues in academia, you hear a lot of, you know, biased left-wing professors. There actually aren't very many of those. Most of them are kind of moderate, liberal, more to center left kind of people. They just want to do their work and go home. They're not going to vote Republican, never. But, you know, they're tolerant people. They're nervous right now. They're nervous because if you've assigned a book by Mark Twain, one of his novels, like Pudd'nhead Wilson or Huckleberry Finn, for 2 decades, you don't do that anymore. It's got the N word in it.
Yes.
So you're nervous in a way now about what you put on a syllabus, because if you have a class of 35, and this is where the numbers get a little funny. If you have a class of 35 students and you assign Huck Finn, the N word is in it. 2 of those students of the 35 file a complaint with the administration of bigotry on the basis of race. And especially if those are students of color.
Right.
That's a federal charge.
Wow.
So the university has to take it seriously. If the other 33 students thought you were a great teacher, doesn't matter.
Right.
It only takes those 2 to make your life miserable for a few months, and you're going to survive. You'll just say, well, I understand. You know, sometimes professors, I didn't mean to offend anyone. Okay, I understand. And you move on. But the whole process itself is punishment.
Yes.
So what are you going to do? You're not going to assign Huck Finn anymore. You just don't want to deal with it. So those 2 were able to change your teaching practice that's going to affect every student in your classes for the next 10 years.
Yeah. My brother's a literary professor, retired now in England. And he's, you know, he's got a lot of humor. He's an author himself. And, you know, he's very kind of hands-on. And he started a magazine with the kids. He started a radio station with the kids. But he had one kid that was never turning to class, and he failed her. And she happened to be a person of color, and the administration jumped down on him. No, you've got to pass her. And he said, she never attended. How can I pass her if she's not here? And when she is here, she's here for 5 minutes and gone. Right? No, it's bad politically. You've got to pass her. And so politics has entered education, and the moment politics enters anywhere, you know we're doomed.
And you know, the sad thing is that almost all people will say, all right, give her a C, pass her on. I mean, when you feel like the whole institution just wants you to go, you know, don't make a problem here. What is the big deal? There's that certain cynicism. And you start saying to yourself, wait a minute, am I the only person who thinks this is bad? I mean, the chairman of my department doesn't want to have to deal with it. The administration thinks that, you know, no, you got to do this. It looks bad. We could have a problem. Come on, we need to keep our minority numbers up. The student, of course, you know, and the student's parents and everything. I'm the only one. What am I sticking my neck out for?
Yes.
if this is the way of the world, just here, fine. Now I can go home and go to sleep without sitting there staring at the ceiling at night, wondering what machinations are taking place at this point. So
there's too much giving in because of that pressure. I was watching actually Foyle's War last night, an old episode of it, and it's an episode where they're devising this machine, but there's a murder around it, and basically he's asked to turn his cheek the other way because this machine must get done for the war effort, and then he's told that he has to look the other way for something else, and he said, when did the law become something you could brush aside in the name of, and he resigned, because he had his principles. Well, we don't see those principles much anymore because people are pressurized. They've got to have their job, or where else would they get a job, their reputation, their this and that. And it's like, it's almost my word is my honor. We do even believe in that anymore. I think so much has been lost in this, just let it go. Just let it go.
When you see the leaders of institutions caving, giving in, going along, you lose faith.
Yeah.
And so many people who work in these institutions, and that includes universities, that includes churches in the United States, that includes the military, that includes corporate America. We all feel you guys are going to just do whatever.
Yeah.
If you feel pressure, you will have no spine. You will not have my back here. And you start thinking, this is how you get ahead in those institutions. Yeah. What I'm doing here and standing on principle is actually going to end up punishing me,
right,
and everyone else.
Yes.
We bring this back to the kids. What do the millennials see?
Yes.
The millennials see that if we march on the president's office with angry faces, he's going to come out, he's going to apologize, he's going to appease and conciliate. Wow. Oh, yeah. We got him. This place doesn't stand for anything.
Right.
The elders won't stand up. They're not even giving us something meaningful against which to rebel.
Yeah.
They go along. And that, I think, is psychically debilitating.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, when something is so obviously wrong or right, and yet you can debate that to the nth degree and try and find a right in it, the action is wrong. The actual action on so many levels hits the box of wrong. Where is the debate of what should be right, and the length of time and the manipulation and everything else that goes on? So much taxpayers' money is in the defense of defending a wrong. And what does that teach our kids? Right? You throw enough money at it, you throw enough fake news at it, and the truth will never come out. Well, it makes them feel, well, either nobody cares about their truth, or it doesn't matter if they tell the truth or not, because no one cares.
No one cares. They sense that, and they lose faith.
Yes.
Millennials, they don't go to church. Now, a lot of them say they're spiritual. They believe in something.
Yeah.
It's the institution.
Yes.
They don't like. They don't like that commitment. They don't really have a strong faith that gives them regular rituals that would give moral grounding. There are certain principles that the church is going to require, whatever the church may be, whatever the temple religion may be. It's going to be binding in some way. And if the leaders of those churches aren't, if they're sort of loosey-goosey, forget it. Why bother? But we didn't bring them into that religious formation. They don't have any patriotism. Well, I don't say, most of them don't consider themselves patriotic. They say we're not patriotic. And that, I think, is another problem, because patriotism, the gratitude, that's actually a good feeling.
The pride, yes.
Good to feel pride
Right.
in your home.
Yes.
In your heritage.
Mm.
That's an endowment.
Yeah.
We took that away from them. So they don't have God. They don't have in any meaningful way. They don't have country in any meaningful way. We didn't give them a legacy of great works of art, music, architecture, literature. We let that heritage go. We didn't give them great love stories and great battle stories and heroism and villains and betrayal and all the rest that give some greatness to the past, some monumentality to it. I mean, they've been tearing down statues in the United States, a lot to Confederate leaders, and I oppose that as well. I can explain why, but they're not
the diminishing history, so we don't learn from it.
Well, they're not learning. They're not putting up other statues.
Right.
That was not a correction of the historical record. It was an annihilation.
Exactly.
Historical record. This was a nihilistic impulse because they don't believe in anything. They don't have any purpose in life. Consuming, Facebook. Yes. Building your friend list, building your Twitter followers.
How many followers have you got? How much money do you make? How much, did you buy the latest Gucci bag? Yes, the Kardashians have got this, so you've got to have it, otherwise you're nobody.
Not going to do it for you. That's
no.
not going to do it.
No.
And so here they are at age 33. What is the meaning of life? If they had kids, that would give them a meaning of life.
Yeah.
Could give them something to devote themselves to beyond themselves. No kids.
Right.
No country. No religion. What matters to them? Well, they're looking for meaning and purpose.
Yes.
And finding it in a lot of the bad places.
Right. Like I've got kids 33, 37, 30, 39. My 33-year-old is a mother. She is a social worker. And they're vegan and activists, and they weren't brought up religious, but they were brought up with the religion of love and kindness and consideration towards one another. We were the house that took the stray kids in when there was trouble in their home. So they grew up with that empathy, because I made sure they did. And yeah, they had their video games and they had the videos, but they were not, they only got a phone later in life. And even now, I know more about running a computer than they do. They might be more savvy on the phone, but they're not dictated by the apparatuses. That doesn't mean they didn't make their own journey of confusion and discovery. They have distrust in the government. They have distrust in the system. Yeah. Right? They actually do love their country. My son owns a restaurant. He's now dating somebody with a kid, so he's now become a stepdad and he's immersed himself into it. My other daughter at 39 is the traveler in the world. She's the free spirit, so she's seen a great deal of the world, and she's seen the wonders. She's seen the beauty of humanity and cultures and things like that, and it's meant a great deal to her, and to kind of bring it back and share it with other people. Yeah. There are a lot of the millennials that I've interviewed that have stepped up. They're doing documentaries, they're doing this, they're doing that. They're the other side where they saw something missing and they decided to go looking for it. Yeah. We're talking about the one side that really is just bought up mindlessly. They're not brought up with any content or with any philosophy or with any meaning of life or with any conversation in life. It's just this, basically they've lived the 2% of life, the shallow on the top, and they don't know how to go deep. They just simply don't. Well, you obviously gave your kids, the depth. And conversation around the table at dinner every night. Yes. Talking about ideas, looking at some good movies and things like that. That isn't as common as we think, as we'd like to be, certainly. More and more. Yeah. Especially, I would say 25 and under, definitely. The kids tune out. They go on their phones and they go off to their rooms and they have a great time. Yeah.
in there while doing it. You know, there is that small subset of millennials, you know, the top 10%, they were super kids, you know, piling up all these AP courses in high school and doing internships and charity work, volunteering, building up this daunting resume that would have blown me out of the water when I was 17.
Yeah.
Believe me. And, you know, and they lead good lives, that they wouldn't go to jail, you know, like I ended up a few times when I was a teenager. And that wasn't that unusual, actually,
Right, yes.
in my world.
We pushed the envelope back then, right?
Getting caught drinking and, you know, speeding in your
Yeah.
car. But they're very good and conscientious. And they do pretty well because they have the drive.
Yes.
But you know, if you get out of that top 10%, it was a steep fall.
Yeah.
It still is.
End of the cliff. Poof, one way down. Yes.
Yeah, and a democracy can't run this way. You've got it. You can't have this tiny elite.
Yes.
Super successful, and they live in their own little zip codes that no one else can afford, and they never interact outside of their own elite circles. In the United States, the elite have very much created a bubble world for themselves. The private schools, the expensive neighborhoods, the
ivory towers,
they work in blue and white collar places where no one else, you know, outside the elite ever comes. And so they actually, I have heard, and part of it is academia. You know, I got lucky to get a job at a top research institution, a fabulously wealthy one in Atlanta at Emory University. But as I would go to humanities professor conventions and conferences, you know, all these dignitaries, I heard from these oh so enlightened progressive people more nasty condescension for other human beings than I would ever hear among those other human beings.
Right. Humble? No, not in the vocabulary.
and superior. And also just contemptuous.
Yes.
Of the rest of the citizenry.
Yeah.
In America. And this is one of the problems, and I'll just to bring it back to the book, you know, the elite make their kids spend less time on screens. In the 90s, there was this digital divide that everyone was worried about. The rich kids are going to have access to the internet with all its wonders of knowledge, and poor kids aren't, and that's going to exacerbate the achievement gap and the income gap. Well, now the lowest scorers on standardized tests in reading have the most screen time.
Yeah.
The high scores actually limit their screen time.
Yes.
And so we see the elite, they take care of themselves. They're not going to push for an education system that has more classic literature and art in it, because they don't want to come off as reactionary, conservative, old-fashioned. They want to, you know, the elite in our country, they want to be up to date, cutting edge, innovative, all of the 21st century skills, attitudes that they're supposed to have. So they walk the walk in their own homes with their kids. They won't talk the talk.
Right. Yeah.
Openly.
Have you seen the documentary of how Sesame Street was made and why? Highly recommend it. I think you will really enjoy it. And it was interesting because it was brought about through the intense advertising of kids whose TV was their babysitter, low income, middle income, low income. And they were watching beer commercials and this and that. And they realized this is unhealthy, right? But also they always realized back then that their attention span was not long, right? Everything was 30 seconds for an ad. So they went into Sesame Street to bring about the letters, the math, the this and that, to bring that education, to bring a sense of community, a sense of belonging. Right. And it's fascinating of how they came about it and, you know, who put into it. And it was really like, well, this is what I want to do. And everybody, well, what about this? And what about that? The hodgepodge. And then did the discovery. And then, of course, the ultimate success, you know, 50 years later, it's still a great educational platform for kids and reading and community and communication, etc. But back then, they already saw a need, and the TV was the nemesis, right? It was the one that now we put in front of the computer or the tablet. You know, I see people handing tablets to the tiny babies or the young children, and they just don't realize neurologically the damage that they're doing to this child who is mindlessly, you know, rather like the old movies where you see the twirl capturing them. You know, it's awful to see, and we're seeing so much more learning disabilities, and obviously, you know, autism and interaction problems, certainly a lack of communication. And it's also because parents aren't sitting down and having a conversation with their kids, right?
Right. Well, in the United States, you know, the SAT exam, it's a college entrance exam. They added a writing component they decided to add it in 2005. So 2006, there was an essay test on the SAT. Every year since then, scores went down, except 2 years when they were flat. But they went down every year. Now, wait a minute. Kids were actually writing more words than ever before with these phones and the texting and the email. How could it be that their writing got worse? Well, because this kind of social media writing actually grooves bad habits.
Yes.
It
like bad driving.
Vocabulary.
Yes.
You know, I started, when I was teaching, I started doing a couple of things. One was making students memorize poems and then recite them to the class the next day we met. Now that's like a middle school exercise, but I found that the students' capacity, now 20-year-olds' capacity to handle words that were unfamiliar to them, it's gone down. And so you're going to have to memorize it, which means you're going to have to learn more words, and you're going to have to say them out loud, and you're going to have to engage in public speaking in front of the class, and you're going to have to get out of your own seething head as well, get into another character. That was one thing I did. And these things, they hated it. Oh, it was misery for them. But when they would stand in front of the class and recite that poem, oftentimes they would break down, and I said, oh, hold it. Pause, think, hold on. And they would stand there, work, and often it would come to them.
Right.
And they could keep going. And Sarah, when they would finish and sit down, great gratification on their faces.
Yes. A sense of achievement, a sense of self-pride, right? Yeah.
Good. The other thing was I would often make them write their papers by hand.
Yes.
In cursive, preferably.
Right. Yeah.
So they
I mean, how many people know? I mean, a lot of kids don't even know how to hold a pencil.
They don't, and they get on that keyboard and go brrr.
Exactly.
No, you got to slow down. You got to craft your sentences.
Yes.
That pencil, you know, get a no, don't use a pencil. Get that old fountain pen. This is an old Parker from about 1950.
Right.
This is what you want to use.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you still get ink cartridges for that?
Well, this one has an interesting mechanism. It's got a pump inside
Oh,
here.
right.
Open it up and you squeeze it. You put it in the ink. You squeeze. You let go, and the suction pulls ink up.
I remember those at school. I always ended up with more ink on my fingers.
They could be messy. That's a problem. It's a problem. But you know, you want to tell kids, look, you know, write. Think about your words. Slow down. Make your expression a little unique. Don't use the cliches.
Yes.
You know, get away from youth speak.
Yeah.
which has become more hardened in their heads. I mean, when we hear members of Congress like AOC and, guests on NPR saying like in every sentence,
Yeah.
one wants to say to them, you've been cheated.
Yeah.
In your education because someone didn't tell you stop.
Mm-hmm.
Go listen to the speeches of FDR
Yes.
and Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to them speak and watch old radio shows with Edward R. Murrow or some of the great correspondents. Listen to the way they speak and then listen to yourself speak.
There's a few beautiful ones out there, and I can't remember exactly which one this is, but it's Charlie Chaplin. He looks like Hitler and he's doing a speech.
Oh, yeah.
And it's absolutely beautiful. Every time it comes up, I do repost it because it's one of those speeches that and if you listen to all of those people that capture us, it's not just the words, it's the tone and the rhythm of their delivery. They know how to use the tone, they know how to build it, they know how to rhythmic it so that it literally penetrates you. It's not speaking at you, it's speaking to you, within you, and it becomes captivating. And you remember those words because you remember the passion and the conviction behind it. They're not empty words.
Walt Whitman talks about listening to a certain preacher once, like this energy from the man's voice was coming inside him, hitting him all the way down.
Yes.
And he felt it was some animal magnetism
Yeah.
gripping him when this man, he says it seized you with a power heretofore unknown. That was how he put it. The Chaplain, that's from The Great Dictator.
Yes.
And Chaplin, of course, was a genius.
Yes.
There's another example of students, young people having a hard time watching because the pacing could be a little slow. The last 5 minutes of his film City Lights are a masterful choreography. The movement and the placing of the characters on this street corner as the action proceeds, it builds to a dramatic recognition scene, as so many classical dramas do. And this can only be passed along through familiarity.
Yeah.
You got to show them this. They don't know.
No.
They don't know.
They don't know what they don't know, right?
Yeah. They haven't heard great speeches, great vocalization. So the like thing doesn't bother them.
No.
I tell students, look, if you put a like in every sentence, no one's ever going to take you seriously. You must stop. You got to work on this now. And it would embarrass them a little bit, but a little embarrassment now is better than a lot of embarrassment later.
It's like, I remember taking my daughter to a daily workshop, and I was going to be speaking at one point, but there was somebody speaking before me, and she listened to him, and she was, I think, around about 11 at the time. And she went up to him, she said, "I found what you said very interesting, but utterly boring." And because she's very candid in what she said, but she said, if you could inject more warmth into it, it would be more inviting. Right? And he kind of looked at her, and yes, he had great content, but monotone. And why are our great speakers so good? Because it's the emphasis they put behind the words, the meaning they put, they inject their conviction, their passion, what it means to them behind it. And so we may hear the words, but we feel what the words mean. And that is the art of great speaking. And, kudos to her. I mean, the guy actually thanked her because it's, he had so many people walk out on him, because he was monotone and boring,
Think about it and get better. You can do that. You can.
Practice makes perfect, right?
Indeed. But yeah, someone, we look at some of these people who say that they have the magic. The Beatles is a perfect example. People sometimes raise this. The Beatles just had this magic. Look, The Beatles played gigs hundreds of times,
Yes. To
night
perfect.
after night, over and over.
Yes.
And they didn't have the magic the first 30 times.
Right.
It wasn't there. I mean, it does practice over and over, long-term exposure and participation. This gets you there.
And you look at certain stars that suddenly overnight sensation. Yeah, that overnight sensation was 10 years of hard work.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Or you have some young people that suddenly, the performance is absolutely incredible for their age. And you kind of ask them why. The influence of those people that came before them. They learned from the greats by listening to them, watching them, mimicking them, being taught by them. And so obviously it's intricately in them, that gift, but they knew how to tap into it because they paid attention to the people that came before them.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm very much a person about, the gift of the present is in the now. Be present. This is what we have right now, is now. Don't carry your yesterday's baggage. Don't constantly be chasing tomorrow, because what we have is today. But what we've ended up with a lot of young people, and actually a lot of older people as well, is the now is so empty because they've got nothing seeded for tomorrow. And all they've got is anger of yesterday. So there's nothing they're doing in the now that actually is going to benefit tomorrow.
The seeds should have been planted at age 16.
Yeah.
And they weren't.
No.
And now we see the result with the fragility, the bitterness.
Oh God, the anger out there. Oh.
The vengefulness. And I'm not sure, Sarah, I mean, I know we're wrapping up, but I'm not sure where it's going to go.
Everything has like a pendulum swing, right? I think we're going to go over to this side and we're going to realize, hang on, we're out of balance. And then it's going to swing back and hopefully into an equilibrium. But, I'm 67. I don't know how old you are. We're coming from a generation of the great arts, of reading, of conversation. I used to love being around the dinner table and having conversations, this about life, about philosophy, about everything. We don't see that so much. We don't encourage that so much. And I think it's like with everything, you're going to see it swing too far. And then it's like, this is not working, and then one reason I do this one particular show of our gifted children and do so many shows on children, if we don't invest in our kids today, if we do not give them all the things that they need today, they're the dysfunctional adults of tomorrow. And we're seeing dysfunctional adults out there right now, which, if you look back, were not invested in their youth.
Yeah. When one of the things that prompted the first book was seeing the reading rates go way down. Mm-hmm. Leisure reading, young people were doing a lot less leisure reading than previous generations had. The millennials now in their 30s, they haven't boosted their reading habit one single bit.
Right.
They're at about 6 or 7 minutes a day of leisure reading. Mm. That's it. And it's not because, they don't have leisure time. They have about 5 hours of open leisure time per day. These are survey data that I bring into the book. The time is there, but they haven't changed their leisure habits since teenage years.
Right.
That they're doing the same stuff. They don't want to change.
Right. I mean, Harry Potter, the whole series, created a whole generation of readers and continues to do so. But we need something else out there, don't we? That is going to entice them back into the books.
Yeah. No, it was I remember Harry Potter phenomenon, the lines outside the bookstores.
Yes.
It was remarkable, but they didn't keep going. There aren't any lines outside the bookstores for any other books that we've seen since then. For the young. And you wonder why. Why aren't there 20 series like that?
Yes. I mean, there's plenty of them being written. Philip Pullman, Northern Lights, his trilogy is great.
Yeah.
And I love anything, and I read a lot of youth books. My brother writes a lot of youth books too, and I love those youth books because it's kind of stepping into the mind of the youth as they are entering adulthood. And it's if we can inject the wonderment, the possibilities, and the achievability into them, then they're going to go through life wanting to know more, wanting to learn more, wanting to achieve more. But
Yeah.
putting out what is the achievability, and the achievability, quite honestly, is inner happiness. And inner happiness isn't your Hamptons, isn't being the top elite in the ivory towers, just protecting me, myself, and mine. It is about community. It is quintessentially about love, self-love, and love of life.
Well, we know that, once your needs have been satisfied and you're basically comfortable in where you live and enough food
Yep.
to eat and clothing, that there's no correlation between money and happiness. Beyond that basic level, making $700,000 a year doesn't make you more happy than making $300,000 a year or 100,000, whatever your basic needs level is. More money doesn't mean more happiness.
No, it certainly doesn't.
Meaning. You need more meaning. You need more purpose. You need
Yes,
more things to sacrifice for, more things to get, more reasons to get up in the morning beyond yourself. That's what.
absolutely.
And the digital age introduced a self-involvement to a degree we'd never ever seen before in human history.
Self-obsessed. But it's interesting because what we are seeing right now, a lot of people like the Kardashians and the big, huge social medias or celebrities that people follow, we're seeing their flaws, we're seeing their struggles, we're seeing their obstacles, where they've been put up on this pedestal of, I want to be like that. And now they're talking about bipolar, or they're talking about mental illness, or talking about this struggle or that struggle. And suddenly it's kind of coming down to, I'm just like you, I just happen to be successful. And so slowly it's chiseling away at this illusion that to be there is heaven. Right? They're beginning to see everybody has a little hell in their lives. It's what do we do about it?
Yeah. The fame became, and in the 90s, I think, was when the fame ambition really took hold of young people. They want to be famous.
Yes.
They want to be known. And a few of them made it. A few of them became YouTube stars. A few of them became singers, and Mark Zuckerberg was a billionaire by what, age 25 or
Right.
something. Hey, me too. That they and what, again, the pursuit of fame. Well, now you're 35 and you're not famous.
Oh, you must be a failure.
You're never going to be famous, and you're going to get old.
Yeah.
You're going to die. Okay.
Somebody pointed out to me the other day that there is an entire demographic that take pride in being dumb. That just take pride in, I'm hardworking, or not even hardworking. I just, that any form of knowledge is elitism.
Yeah.
Is against you. And it's like, it used to be that so many people were deprived of an education, and they wanted an education because they knew that there was the way out of poverty and a way to grow and achieve things in life. We know in third world countries, when we invest particularly in women, of an education, how it changes their lives, their families' lives, how it changes entirely their communities. They're begging for an education. And yet it seems to be in North America, an education means you're stuck up, you're elite, and you're a liar. And, you've distanced yourself from everyone else. And it's who started promoting that, and why are they buying it?
It's probably the figures who appear most often on TV, the ones who, the movies. When was the last time that a character in a movie was hailed, a movie that appeals to the young, was hailed for being very smart, You know, there's a film, Goodwill Hunting. What was that, 20 years ago or so?
Well, it must be 30 years now, isn't it?
Maybe 30 years ago.
Yes, easily.
There was an example. That actually was a little, I'm not sure that really praised knowledge. That was more just high IQ kind of.
Robin Williams, Dead Poets Society.
Yeah, the 80s, you know, that mid 80s now.
Yeah.
We don't see figures of great respect expressing great respect for knowledge. I mean, you know, athletes certainly don't bring that across.
There's an actor, Benedict Cumberbatch, a British actor. He did the whole modern series of Sherlock, which was so well written and so well done. And he made deducing, paying attention, intelligence, and reading and investigating sexy. Right. So, you know, he's certainly, and he chooses parts that are very, very intelligent, that, you know, that, yes, he's done a superhero as well, but even that had some wonderful messages in. So there are out there, but to the crowd that I've just been talking about, they wouldn't watch those anyway. We
don't have our politicians insisting upon you know, great traditions, great knowledge, you know, great works. Doesn't happen in America. And again, you know, the push for education in America has been about two things. It's been about either achieve, you know, that career.
More is more. Yes.
STEM, in the STEM, science, technology, engineering, math fields. It's not in languages, it's not in philosophy or religion or archaeology or art history or English. No one is really pushing that very hard. And that goes for the left and the right in America today.
I was watching Billie Holiday last night, Andrea Day playing Billie Holiday, and she played brilliantly, but it's how the feds were after her. And it was a war against drugs, which was just their cover. And because she did a song that was about the white man lynching, where she would literally talk about the bulging eyes and, you know, very, very graphic. And they would arrest her for it. And the whole persecution to her death, literally, you know, chaining her to the bed, even though they know she's dying, and always using the drugs as an excuse. But it was so that she would shut her song up. And she pointed out to them, my song is going to be playing to your grandchildren and your great grandchildren. It's always going to be a message out there. And so very true, because ultimately we can't hide the truth. It doesn't matter how much people try to coat paint something, the truth will always find its way out. And it's up to us to help it, you know, and help it reach the ears that it needs to reach.
There's some great videos on YouTube of her singing with Lester Young and other jazz players that you want to, you know, her pacing was even when she was all messed up, she could carry it off. You want to show those to the younger people so that they could see, you know, how the blues would be sung.
Yeah. Well, that's why these kind of movies are important right now. And you've got Anita Franklin movie out there with Jennifer Hudson, probably going to get an award for it. And it's not just about their music, which was utterly great. It's the story in the bringing of their music, you know. And it's if the movies are a way of teaching the generation to think more, to converse more, and perhaps even to investigate more, then okay. But we want to get them back to being inquisitive and asking questions and wanting to read and you know, to have a conversation.
You know, a lot of movies served as a kind of moral instruction in older times, you know, the way Humphrey Bogart and Gary Cooper.
Yes.
For young guys, they thought, I want to behave, I want to be like him.
Yeah.
And for women as well.
Yeah.
young girls, the way some of these actresses, Olivia de Havilland and others would behave in musics. It would be either good lessons or bad lessons.
Right.
But there was
Laura
a
Bacall
moral
comes to mind.
instruction
Yeah.
to it that went one way or the other, that people would follow. And I find those films so much more interesting morally and characterologically than the fare that we've been giving kids, that Hollywood, what Hollywood does now.
Right.
The scripts are so bad.
Yes. They're
And
so shallow.
they're
And
ridiculous.
they're so repetitive. It's almost like they're using one template and just inserting the actors and the storyline in it, and it's like, where's the originality?
Well,
Where's
I've heard that they dumb down the scripts because these scripts have to be easily translated into
right.
Chinese.
Right. Oh gosh. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, it's stop underestimating the human mind. It has an enormous capacity, as does our heart. And we have to understand that the short-term thing about the consumerism, because everything comes back to consumerism, the more dumber they are, the more you can sell, the more fear you can sell. And with more fear, there's more control, right? But it's short-term, because now you have generations and generations of dumb that can't think for themselves, who are going to be the future leaders. What kind of society are you going to have? And they're not even going to be earning the income that's going to be purchased what you're pitching, right? Because they're not going to be able to have a job, right? It's going to go elsewhere. So it's short-sighted, but as we've learned from history, everything has to reach its pitch before it kind of, okay, now we go back to something else. And I'm hoping soon that we're going to see that pendulum swing in another way. But that comes into, as parents or grandparents, as I am, my grandson has been read to virtually from the day he was born. He's read several books to a day. The only phone time he's allowed to have is when he's talking to grandparents through the phone, when we're not with him FaceTime. And it's all about the educational play. And they're very, he's not even allowed to watch TV, nothing. If they don't watch TV if he's around, and they're going the other way with that, which is great. Nature, teach them all about the trees and the creatures that are running around. And you know what? For centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries, that has been a great education for humanity. And it's one of appreciation for our planet, of gratitude for what this planet gives us. And the young people are so detached from where food comes from. The grocery store, everything's grown there. No, know the farmer's journey and appreciate the food that's put on your table, right? Know as somebody else's struggle that what you have today is because of that other person's struggle, right? And understand, if you want to achieve something, there isn't any quick downloadable app or quick fix. There is going to be a little struggle in getting it.
Life is struggle. Life has been so hard in the past.
Yes.
Life is easier now in so many ways than it was even in the recent past. You guys, there's a lot to be grateful for.
Hell of a lot. In
the world today. And so much of the misery that you're experiencing, it's unnecessary.
Yeah. You're buying the wrong goods, right? And the happiness is actually in the simplicity of life. I mean, I interview a great deal of authors, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm not a chapter a night reader. It's leave me alone and I'm reading and try and finish the book tonight or over a couple of days, and I immerse myself in it. And I like turning the page, and actually having the book in hand. I'm many hours a day on this computer with my work, but I use it for entertainment sometimes, but I use it to discover, right? So yes, technology is not going to go anywhere. It's around unless Armageddon comes along. This is something that always gets me with these Armageddon movies, is that we lose all power. And for some reason, the people that are left don't know how to switch it back on again. You know, and I just don't get that. It's like, if we created it before and everything is still there, we've just got to manage it and put it back on. Why can't we? And I don't get it. You know, we always seem to go back into the Neanderthal age and, you know, almost hitting each other over the head, you know, with a bone. And maybe that's kind of the reset that mentality, you know, humanity feels that they need. Go back to the beginning and relearn.
It's probably part of the plot of, starting at the beginning and getting down to basics. That makes for a better plot. But again, it's just not real.
No.
So much of what they consume is just not real.
No.
It has no reality. It has no plausibility. Nobody speaks this way.
No.
Nobody talks like this, the way people are talking in these movies. Nobody has these feelings and thoughts even. And it's fabricating, again, a false reality.
Yeah. And then when reality hits them, they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not like the movies, right? It's real. And what happens? They go into a depression. And then we have suicide, or we have addiction, or we have violence, because they don't know how to handle the truth.
Sir, how long are we slated for? Just
well, we're going to wind up right now. But if you've got something else to say, please do.
Oh no, I have another thing coming.
Right. Nope. So please, how do people get hold of the books? How do they get hold of you, and what else do you offer?
You know, the book is The Dumbest Generation Grows Up, from Stupefied Youth to Dangerous Adults. It comes out this week. And of course, you know, the great big, you know, the universe's store, Amazon. It's there with Barnes and Noble at the website. You can get them at discount right now at those sites. You mentioned my name. People can look me up. I do a podcast twice a week at First Things Magazine. And I'm always happy to respond to people who write to me. After The Dumbest Generation came out, you know, it insults 93 million Americans. I got a lot of emails, and I responded to every single one, which I felt it my duty.
Yeah, I'm like, we must be old school. I do the same.
If you're going to take a swing at people, you know, you got to stand up and face the music.
Yeah, exactly.
Mixed metaphors for you there. So
yeah.
anytime. But
so what is your site? What is your site's name?
Well, you can go to firstthings.com and you'll see the media there with me.
And the website and the podcast and your books and everything are all on there. Okay, right. So firstthings.com. You know, it's very easy to pass the buck and, you know, point the finger. It's government, it's education, it's this and that. But there's three fingers pointing back at us and say, what are you going to do about it? And we know we're in trouble. And like, don't just, you know, look at this and say, yeah, you two old farts. No. We know what we're talking about, right? We've lived in that world where, you know, that conversation and that whether it's intuitive or intellectual intelligence actually built the things that have now become your slave phone and all of that. We built these things to make your life easier, for progress, you know, now we're doing this by Zoom and we can do it anywhere in the world. And there's some wonderful things for technology, but don't let technology replace your life. Right? It's not Google this. A quick story on Twilight Zone, I think it was. And it was in the future, and there's this computer, you know, all they just said was, computer, what do I need to know about this? And da, 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 da. They never had to think for themselves, never had to store information. There was one guy, the chip didn't work in his head, so he was considered dumb. The computer breaks down, he becomes the teacher. Right. So the moral of the story is this: technology is a great asset. It is not a replacement for your own intellect.
That's good. Well, what we do is, in our interactions with younger people, we try to give them better things. We try to let them know of the better art and music, and we talk to them about the better heroes and villains from the past. We try to give them a more meaningful world, because they're hungry for it.
Right.
Their bitterness is because they lack something. And if we give it to them, we have faith,
Right.
that they'll improve.
Right. Inspiration begets invitation. So when you inspire them, you're inviting them to want to know more.
Yeah. Agreed. All right.
Thank you so much, Mark. Been delightful having you here. And folks, please don't just think about this and go, somebody else's problem. It's all of our problem. And we need to do something about it. So let's turn to our youth and ignite them and invite them to kind of see there's a lot more to life. Until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. Please tune in to our selfdiscoverymedia.com/shows and you will see all the other genres that we have from you. Every week on Tuesday, we bring you new shows from illuminating people. If you know someone that should be interviewed, please contact us at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com. Now stay tuned for your next show.